الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدًا عبده ورسوله. بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح للأمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده، وارض اللهم عن الصحابة والتابعين وتابعيهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today's khutbah, I chose a title for it. It's the imbalance in our life, the lack of balance, and the lack of prioritization. So it's the jurisprudence of priorities. It's a topic that's very well known in Islamic studies, championed by Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, rahimahullah. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu wa tajawaz an sayyi'atih. He passed away recently and left more than 200 books in Islamic studies. The most prolific probably since Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, as far as writings and legacy. And he left it all fi sabilillah to be distributed. So there is an imbalance, and I always like to speak from context. I don't like to speak theoretical khutbahs, although they are necessary for us to learn our deen. You have to start somewhere. But the path that I chose for myself, having a background in engineering many years ago and having spent the last 10 years researching the Muslim community, I found that it's better to speak from context, meaning that the khutbah has to reflect the reality that we're living so that people can walk away with something to do after hearing the khutbah. So the context that I like to share with you is a context in which any observant from overseas or locally will notice that our priorities are mixed up. Let me give you a couple of examples. The first example is that in my studies, I found out, based on the research of Dr. Ihsan Bagbi, that In 2000, in 99, 2000, we had 970 masjids in all of America, the entire United States. Right now, as we speak, the number is approaching 4,000. 4,000. And we're saying, mashallah. But hold on a minute. When I tell you that there is 400 masjids in New York City alone, we are still saying mashallah. But what about when I tell you that there is 120,000 Muslim students in New York City in the public school system, learning that it's okay to have two daddies? Are we still saying mashallah? Why isn't there 40 Muslim schools? Why are our women who are battered or who are having difficult time going to non-Muslim shelters? Why are our kids or even adults who need psychiatric help going to a psychiatrist? The first thing that the psychiatrist tells the Muslim girl is, why are you wearing this thing on your head? Take it off. That's a sign of backwardness. Why don't we have Muslim psychiatrists? We Muslims were the first to introduce psychiatry. Read the books of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, the 5th century scholar. Read the books of Islamic scholars talking about proper Islamic psychiatry. Ibn Sirin, many of the Muslim scholars, hundreds of years ago. And yet, we are having to send our kids to non-Muslims so that they can judge them or modify their behavior to conform with the other society, not our society. No special consideration for Islamic values. Yeah, I'll give you a couple of more examples. Oh, by the way, how do I know that there's 120,000 Muslim students in New York City alone? A study done by Columbia University. Anybody wants to see the study, I'll give you the name and how you get it, or I'll send you the PDF. There's 1,200,000 students in New York City. 10% of them are Muslims. And you do the simple math, that's 120,000 Muslim students being taught in the most liberal school system in the world. And you know what liberal means. And you know what's coming. In Canada, they already reached a point where the kids going to school in this coming year, in this starting season, they will not be referred to as he or she. The child, even if he's 5 years old, he's going to be allowed to call himself a he or a she. The parents no longer have the right to tell their kid, you're a boy. If the kid says, I want to be a girl, that's fine, you could be a girl. What kind of nonsense is this? This is the path that this country is going on. At some point or another, we're getting there. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Here are some examples of things that deserve support more than building another masjid on top of another masjid on top of another masjid. Yeah, I was in New York City visiting a physician friend of mine in Queens, and it was Maghrib time. And he said to me, you want to pray in the masjid? I said, sure. So as we left his building, we got in the street. He said to me, which masjid do you want to go to? That one, that one, that one, or that one? There was 5 masajid within walking distance. Why? Why? Wouldn't there one be enough? And the other 4, maybe one of them should be a homeless shelter, or a battered women's shelter, or a drug rehab, or maybe 3 of them could be combined to be made into a school that can teach our children, why not? Because our priorities are mixed up. That's the main topic of the khutbah. Here are a couple of examples of projects that should be supported, but they're not. A brother by the name Mohammed Abbasi. His grandfather used to be the Grand Mufti of Jordan when I was growing up 50, 60 years ago. Mohammed Abbasi gathered more than 3,000 maps of Palestine, many of them, some of them, more than 1,000 years old. Only to prove one point, that there was always a Philistine. Always. And here are the maps from all over the world, not Muslim maps. Greek maps, Roman maps, Byzantine maps, you name it. All of it has Palestine written all over it. And he did that job all by himself, self-funded. He came by not long ago. We all clapped and celebrated him and congratulated him. But at the end of the day, he's still on his own. He's getting no support. Another example. There's an organization called Wafa House. I had the honor and the pleasure of being on its board a few years ago. I served on its board. It was founded about 12, 13 years ago in Clifton, New Jersey, and is still there until now. Wafa House has taken care of more than 12,000 cases of Muslims in need of help in that community. And I'll give you an example of one of them. A brother comes from overseas, from Southeast Asia. I'm not going to say the country because I don't want to think anybody think I'm defaming their nation. Comes here with his wife and kids. He's used to back home, wherever he comes from. He's used to slapping the kids around, slapping the wife, wherever he gets his way around. He did it here, and he was on the verge of losing his entire family. They took the kids. Wafa House intervened and said, look, this guy just came over. He doesn't understand. He needs counseling. We'll provide counseling. They provided counseling and managed to convince the government to give them the kids back under supervision. This is the kind of work that this organization does, and a lot more. If I tell you some of the cases we received there, wallahi, it'll turn your hair gray. About the 60-year-old woman who's thrown out of the house by her kids in the middle of the night. La ilaha illallah, after the mother takes care of her kids all of these years, and then she winds up in the streets. Where did she go? She would go to Wafa House. Wafa House is a non-profit, it's not a business, and it should be supported. We find it so easy to write a check for a masjid. And I'm not bashing the masajid. Wallah, we need masajid. We need masajid. Of course we need masajid. But do we need 4,000 of them? Why can't we have 3,000 masjid and 1,000 other types of organizations? Anyway, one last example. I met a brother. His name is Walid Mazid. Somebody introduced me to him. He came and visited me. To introduce his organization. His organization is called Reach Foundation. The story is more important than the organization. He lived in Louisiana. And one day he was riding an Uber. In the Uber, he realized that the driver was his classmate back in Palestine. Here's the problem. The Uber driver was the top student in the class, probably in the entire school district back home, and here he is driving an Uber here. He said, I started crying. How could somebody like him be driving while I was way behind him in school. I got to go to college and get a degree, and I have a decent life. He said that day, this happened about 10 years ago. He said that day I decided that I will give everything to my name. I will sell the house, I will sell the land, I will sell everything to make sure that guys like him wind up in college. He started this organization, and since that time, he has managed to send 1,682 students after high school, the top 5% of all students in Palestine. The top 5, these are the highest, the creme de la creme as they call it. He managed to send them to universities at the expense of Reach Foundation, which is mainly funded by his own money. He almost got divorced, sold his house, sold his business, sold land in Palestine. 1,682. I've seen the videos of the graduation. These students would have been taxi drivers. No offense, brothers. I mean, my father was a mechanic. I'm not a taxi drivers. We're not saying that there's anything wrong with that. What I'm saying is that these are the top 5% of the students. These are supposed to be the scholars, the PhDs, the engineers, the doctors of the community. They need to be supported. If they're not supported, what are they going to wind up doing? That's another project deserving of support. And yet, if he goes and asks for money on the priority of whom should I donate to, he'll probably be number 10 on the list after everything else that we pay attention to. So here is something I want to clarify. And I learned this from Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi in his book, Fiqh al-Muwazanat, and the other one, Awlawiyat al-Haraka al-Islamiyya, for those who know Arabic. He said, we have to differentiate. The same situation could change from time to time and from situation to situation. Meaning, Ya Ikhwa, when we started going to Salat al-Jum'ah, forget Jum'ah, let's talk about Eid. Those of you who have been in this country more than 50 years, remember that in the late 70s, when we wanted to make Salat al-Eid, we had to rent the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City and gather there to pray Eid together. That's how few we were, and that's how lack of space was there. There was no place that we can gather. Number one. Number two, 1978-79, We had one masjid in Jersey City, it's still there on 17 Park Street. In that masjid, I remember Sheikh Hanuti rahimahullah standing and telling us that we are going to pray in his house on 2728 Kennedy Boulevard, in his house, because the masjid had no heat. The heater broke down and we have to get some $5,000 to fix it. Back in 78, it was mandatory upon us to build a masjid like this one like ICPC, and here and there, because there was none. It was just that one place. I used to work in Florham Park. It would take me 1 hour on Jum'ah day, 1 hour to go from Florham Park to Jersey City to pray and then come back. By the time I come back to my job, 3 hours, 3.5 hours have been erased from my day, just to reach a place. I was so happy when I found there's a masjid in East Orange on Central Avenue, and it was Sheikh Ahmed Burhani, may Allah Azza wa Jal bless him. He's still active to this day. And I used to go pray with the African American brothers on Central Avenue. Ya Ikhwa, at that time, we needed masajid. But we didn't need 4,000. We definitely needed masajid. Our priorities got mixed up along the way. Thinking about this issue, I kept saying to myself, there must be evidence in the Quran that directs us in the right direction. And subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal made me remember the ayah from Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 19, Surah 9, chapter 9, Surah At-Tawbah, ayah number 19. It happens to be Hizb 19 too. I don't know this coincidence. Hizb 19, ayah 19. And the ayah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أجعلتم سقاية الحاج وعمارة المسجد الحرام كمن آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وجاهد في سبيل الله لا يستوون عند الله. Do you equate the providing of water to the pilgrims? Siqayat al-Hajj, it was an honor for a family in Mecca to tend to the Hujjaj, to the pilgrims, even in Jahiliyyah. It's considered an honorable civic duty. So the Quran is telling them, do you equate that, Siqayat al-Hajj, wa imarat al-Masjid al-Haram, cleaning of the masjid, al-Masjid al-Haram, equal to striving fi sabilillah, wajahada fi sabilillah? Of course, amana billah. Believing in Allah Azza wa Jal and striving fi sabilillah, la yastawun. Clearly, definitely, absolutely, they're not equal. So the Quran, ya ikhwa, makes it clear to us that there is a higher duty than even civic duty. And here, I read a story in Yusuf Qaradawi's book. He said a few years ago, when the massacres against our brothers and sisters in Bosnia were taking place in the early 90s, 92, 93, 94, around that time. Many of you remember those days when tens of thousands of our sisters were being raped and their men were being massacred in Srebrenica and others. We will never forget those days. Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi says that one of the Egyptian writers wrote that people should prioritize supporting them, our Bosnian brothers, over performing Hajj. And people were appalled. How could this Hajj is fard? It's one of the 5 pillars. How could he say that? They went to Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi. Ya Sheikh, listen to what Fahmi Huwaidi is saying. Yusuf al-Qaradawi thought about it and he actually issued a fatwa in support. He said Hajj can be deferred. If you can't make it this year, you can make it next year. But supporting and saving our sisters from the massacres that are taking place cannot be deferred. That's instant. That's fard ayn of the time and of the place. Right now, right here. So this is just one fatwa. Of course, before that, the Imam of the 5th century, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, noticed that most of the physicians at his time, we're talking about the Imam of an entire century here, the author of Ihya Ulum al-Din. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali noticed that there was too many Jewish and Christian physicians and hardly any Muslim physicians. He issued a fatwa that it was that it was mandatory upon Muslims to teach and graduate and learn to be physicians, so that our sisters and our daughters don't go to be examined by non-Muslims, male and female. This is from the 5th century. It's a problem that's been with us for a long, long time. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi taunted us. He came here a few years ago, and one of his observations was, he said, I was shocked when I found out that people are asking for fatwas about whether they should wear the watch in the right hand or the left hand, whether it's better to eat with the hand or with the fork and spoon. Ya akhi, dakhil Allah. We invented these tools. When the Crusaders came to Bayt al-Maqdis, when they came to our land, they learned how to eat in a plate and a bowl and with a fork and a spoon. They didn't have these things. They used to all eat with one bowl with their hands like that. They learned civility from us. And now we are wondering whether that's allowed or not. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi was offended by this question. He said, people are asking me, is it better to sit on the floor or to sit on a table? Is it better to have a dining room or to sit on the floor, eat with your hand with 3 fingers? And he said, what kind of questions are these? Is it better to have a white gown or regular pantalon or robe? He said, these are the questions I'm being asked in a country that is leading the world with science and technology. So there are examples of where the pitfalls are, and I will mention them after the dua. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فوزا مستغفرين. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man walah. One of the observations related to the topic of the khutbah is that a lot of people are ignoring what is considered in our deen a fardu kifaya, and they are doing things that are less important. One of those responsibilities is standing up in the defense of Islam and against Islamophobia as a priority in this country. That is a major, major responsibility that we have to undertake. And until enough people are doing it sufficiently to deflect the harm and to create peaceful life for ourselves, we are all athimin. Fard kifaya, Shaykh. Fard kifaya. In other words, sufficient number have to do it for the rest to say somebody's doing it. The results have to be there to prove that it's sufficient. And here, I want to show you again that this is not new. One of the great scholars of, I believe, the 6th century, من طبقات الحنابلة, Ibn Aqil, one of the great scholars of the Hanbali school of fiqh, Ibn Aqil, he said something I found very fascinating. He said, إذا أردت أن تعلم محل الإسلام من أهل الزمان. If you want to see the place of Islam with regards to how people interact with it and how Muslims are living at a certain time, فلا تنظر إلى زحامهم على أبواب المساجد. Don't look at how many there are in the masajid. This is what we do. MashaAllah, Salat al-Eid, 20,000, 50,000. Overseas, you have 1 million in one single place in Morocco, I believe. 1 million praying in one place behind one imam. فلا تنظر إلى زحام. Don't look at that, he says. في أبواب ولا ضجيجهم في الموقف. And don't look at لبيك اللهم لبيك, 3 million people doing لبيك اللهم لبيك, while their Amir is selling a painting, buying a painting for $500 million and spending $800 million to buy soccer players for his team. And that's okay. We allow all of that to happen. We allow the rulers who are ruling us to waste our resources and our money, our kids to die of hunger all around the Muslim countries, while at the same time we are proud that we have 3 million in the Hajj and I don't know how many in Salah. And then he says, وَلَا ضَجِيجَهُمْ فِي الْمَوْقِفِ بِلَبَّيْكَ إِنَّ مَنْظُرْ. But rather look at, listen to what he said, Ibn Aqil, almost 1,000 years ago. انظر إلى مواطأتهم أعداء الشريعة. Look at how they stand up to the enemies of Islam. That's how we evaluate our work. The day we know our priorities is the day we look and see where the danger is coming from, and we say to ourselves, "Ana ala thaghra," I am a protector of this position, and I am going to defend it. Inshallah ta'ala, in the next few weeks, I will be conducting a workshop for the youth in this center for about 15 weeks on the topic of how to choose your values, how to prioritize them, how to focus on those priorities so that you can achieve a great, successful life, inshallah. This is easier said than done. I just described it in one single sentence. But let me tell you, it's going to take me 15 weeks of hard work with your youth so that at the end, inshallah, they will have their priorities straight. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فيا فوز المستغفرين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين، أعلي بفضلك كلمة الحق والدين، ووفقنا لما تحب وترضاه يا رب العالمين. اللهم من أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين خيرا فوفقه إلى كل خير، ومن أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين سوءا فأخذه أخذ عزيز مقتدر. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم. وأنت يا أخي أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا واعتدلوا وثابكم الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد، لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله العظيم. استغفر الله. أنت السلام.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Just 1 minute 30 seconds. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. باسمكم جميعا نقدم الشكر والتقدير للدكتور محمد العباسي. جزاكم الله خيرا. Thank you for coming دكتور. دكتور محمد العباسي 50 سنة في العمل الإسلامي موجود في أمريكا. دكتور محمد العباسي ماجستير في إدارة المؤسسات غير الربحية في أمريكا. دكتور محمد العباسي دكتوراه في النشاط السياسي والمجتمعي، النشاط المجتمعي لشباب المسلمين في أمريكا. دكتور محمد عباسي سوف يكون هو يعني الجست سبيكر الأول يوث في المحاضرات في التنمية البشرية في الميني كولج اللي إن شاء الله will be start سبتمبر 9. موضوع المحاضرات في كيفية اختيار الأولويات في حياتنا. very important topic. كيف هو ذكر في عمل منشن الموضوع في الخطبة الثانية كيفية اختيار الأولويات في حياتنا. هذا الموضوع خاص بشباب المسلمين، وأعتقد الخطبة كانت واضحة جدا، واستدل بالآية أجعلتم سقاية الحاج وعمارة المسجد الحرام كمن آمن بالله واليوم الآخر لا يستوون عند الله وجاهد في سبيل الله لا يستوون عند الله. فأرجوكم يعني send your kids to attend دكتور محمد العباسي from September 9 إن شاء الله رب العالمين، السبت الثاني من شهر سبتمبر. تقبل الله منا منكم. جزاكم. الريجستريشن مفتوح ان شاء الله ان اور ويب سايت ان شاء الله، وعندنا فلاير في الموضوع. جزاكم الله خيرا. ثانك يو سو ماتش. every Saturday but please you have to send your youth and you have to make registration on our website. Yes doctor. our youth يعني 16 yes high school and college ان شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير وتقبل الله منا منكم ان شاء الله.